a young, educated North African woman named Vibia Perpetua kept a careful diary at the end of her life, at the end of the first, beginning of the second centuries. Vibia converted to Christianity at a time when it was illegal to do so. She had not even been baptized yet when she was arrested. Her father came to the prison multiple times to beg her to renounce this God of costly love. After all, she wasn't just his daughter, she was also the mother of a newborn child, and surely the love of family is worth something too. Vibia wrote that it broke her heart to see her father struggle, and she longed to hold her child. But pointing to the corner of her cell, she said, "See that pot lying there? Can you call it by any other name than what it is?" "Of course not," said her father. Vibia responded, "Neither can I call myself any other name than what I am. I am a Christian." It was the last conversation Vibia had with her heartbroken father before she was tortured and killed for her faith. Vibia died many things: a young, black, beautiful mother, daughter, sister, but above all, she wishes to be remembered as a Christian, and for that she shall, and a saint too. My name is Whitney Edwards, and I am a priest here in the Diocese of Virginia, was ordained 13 years ago, and am honored to be serving as chaplain at St. Christopher's School in Richmond. It is a pleasure to be with my diocesan family in prayer and love. Praise be to God for gathering us in this way. And welcome to our beloved school chapel. We gather here every morning as an upper school that is 9th through 12th grade, and it is wonderful to start every day that way. There are a good number of us in this chapel every morning, close to 400 students and teachers, and it isn't crowded as much as it is comforting to sit shoulder to shoulder. What any of us wouldn't give for the luxury of a crowded pew right about now. But given the current protocols to prevent the spread of coronavirus, we will stay close together in the spirit until we can in person. And knowing that this too shall pass, consider this a standing invitation for you to visit us, to join us, to find a spot in this pew. We're glad to welcome you, so that you can experience what we do every day, the faithful, joyful, energetic gathering of all these young people. Hearing them sing our old familiar hymns is just so amazing. Hymns of grace and power and truth and the kingdom coming are transformed by these beautiful young voices. There is something true about God speaking so clearly with the voices and the energy of young people. Take today's reading, for example, in Matthew 10. Our favorite young Palestinian rabbi may just be a year or two into his ministry, but his call for discipleship is so convicted. In the body of his sermon, of which a small portion is appointed for today, Jesus says, "What I tell you in the dark, tell in the light. What you hear whispered, proclaim from the housetops. Proclaim the kingdom of God." Our classrooms brim with talented students here. The challenge is not finding their gifts, it's creating an environment where they're willing to risk them so that they might grow them and show them to the world. For every student willing to sing a solo in chapel, I know there are dozens sitting quietly with perfect pitch. For every dancer, mathematician, foreign language phenom who's willing to give it a shot on the stage, at the board, in front of the class, many others are waiting for an easier time. But the truth is, we know the best time is now. It won't get easier. No judgment, of course. We've all been there. I totally accept the response when a student says, "Reverend Edwards, I'm just going to wait until I don't feel like throwing up." I've been there. So the best thing that we can all do, we are all teachers in one way or another, and as adults, is to lead by example, to take risks, to fail, and then to try again and to show it's going to be okay. Because as people of faith, we know that when we connect with our gifts, we connect with the gospel. As St. Francis was fond of saying, preach the gospel always, and when necessary, use words. So if not words, then what? Your gifts. Use them to glorify God and to bring healing to this world through your proclamation of hope. The world is waiting for it. Every one of us is a preacher. We were made so in our baptism. It doesn't matter if you have a theology degree or you can't find the book of Genesis. It doesn't matter if you come from a long line of Christians or you are the first in your family. It's not about us feeling ready. It's about God, who is always ready. So our brilliant and eager and energetic and impatient Lord says, now's as good a time as any. Proclaim the kingdom of God. Now, how you'll do it, that's when it gets interesting. I'm sure you know what's happening at the intersection of Monument and Allen Avenues in Richmond. I don't know that all of us fully know what's happening. It's all unfolding day to day. It is extraordinary, and it's affecting the world. But what is happening at the base of General Robert E. Lee's statue is a whole mix of pain and protest and anger and hope. And every time I go and every time I watch, I see and hear preachers. The place is full of preachers. Some are using megaphones, some music, some art, and many more are preaching with their physical presence. Ava Holloway, a rising ninth grader at St. Catherine's, which is our sister school here, knew just what to preach when she felt the call to do so. Ava is a talented black ballet dancer, so she laced on her shoes, and with the hope of sharing a message of healing and reconciliation, she, along with her friend, Kennedy George, danced. Right there on the statue, I want to show you a picture because it is such a fine sermon. Look at that. Isn't that lovely? What a sermon. Ava and Kennedy danced. Vibia gave her body, not her soul. So again, I ask you, what is it that you will preach to us today? Now, preaching is admittedly not always easy. Jesus isn't about pulling punches, and he tells us it is like sheep in the midst of wolves. As in love with the kingdom as you and I may be, it isn't universally desired. Some find it threatening, with its promotion of the poor, demotion of the powerful, its divine preference for the marginalized, and the general frowning upon of so many of the sins that are the bread and butter of modern life. The kingdom's coming can be as much met with swords and guns as with open arms and organ peals. And it is for this reason that Jesus warns this kingdom coming, and it is coming, might not always be peaceful. So perhaps the hardest part of all is that the fury that we will meet, the disappointment, the anger, it might not only be reserved for the faces of strangers. I don't know if Vibia's father ever understood why his daughter chose to love Christ over this earthly life. Church history does not count him among her converts. Their last conversation was an argument, and their parting painful. That's why Jesus says, brother will betray brother, a father his child, and children will rise against parents, and you will be hated in my name. Sobering words indeed, enough so that temptation arises. The temptation, of course, is to rewrite the gospel, to opt instead for a more anesthetized version, glossing over the challenging parts to make it palatable and peaceful. More Easter, less Good Friday. This temptation strikes one from time to time to keep the name, but shirk the struggle, to lift the cross and deny its cost, to turn away from those who struggle and to retreat to segregated congregations, making our churches a retreat from the world rather than the ground zero for the worldly transformation that they're meant to be. But even as we consider this option, we know it's not real. This version of the gospel, it doesn't exist. And really, who has time to waste on a fantasy? So brothers and sisters, knowing that the Christian life is not an occasional Sunday morning dalliance, I return to the question at hand. What is the good news that you will preach for us with your lips and with your life today and tomorrow and forever? A few nights before Vibia Perpetua died in 203 AD, she had a dream. She saw a ladder so tall it stretched into the sky. At its foot lay a vicious snake, and along its rungs were swords and nails and knives, and she knew she was to climb that ladder as others had done before. Vibia wrote to write that despite the challenges ahead, she had nothing to fear, for she would literally rise above it all. The loss, the pain, the struggle, it was worth it, because the kingdom of God lay ahead. Indeed, an eyewitness account of Vibia's death said that as the sword's blade struck her, just before she died, Vibia called out to the crowd to encourage them to keep the faith and to love everybody. Brothers and sisters, God is calling for us to proclaim the kingdom. If we need inspiration, there is plenty to be found. And I'd encourage you to start with the young people around us and their conviction and their faith, starting with Jesus. Let them remind you of the urgency of now, the truth of the gospel, and the unrelenting power of God's love. Then join your family of faith in sharing the hope of the kingdom. And when it is all said and done, may it be said of you, and may it be said of me, they were Christians.